So this morning was extremely dramatic here in Kyiv. A Russian missiles just hit the absolute center of downtown Kyiv with a missile. And it is devastating to see. This has landed right in the Zone 1 center of Kyiv. Glass and debris was falling all around me because I was filming the aftermath of a cruise missile attack, an attack that killed 18 people here in this city. And I was literally driving from the Donbass, from the front lines across the Dnipro River thinking, oh, finally I'm back home in Kyiv. And I literally watched 3 cruise missiles steaming across the river.
Oh man, I saw a f***ing cruise missile.
Whoa.
Another one.
Whoa, they see that right ahead. And crash into the city center, followed the smoke, and saw windows falling out. I saw people being pulled out in stretchers. And this happened today because Steve Witkoff has left this city, Trump's entourage. And Trump purposely doesn't target this city, even though he wants to every single day, whenever Trump's team are in town, because he wants to gaslight them and pretend like he's not killing civilians like he did today. But something else happened this morning, and that's that the British Council building was destroyed. This building was full of British government officials. This is a place constantly full of British government staff, and it's listed, and the Russians know that it's listed. And the Russians decided to destroy it anyway. This also happened a week after a Russian drone flew over 100 kilometers inside NATO's airspace, inside Polish airspace, and crashed, which I don't think is a coincidence. It also happened that at 6 a.m. this morning, the EU delegation building was destroyed by these Russian missiles as well. And Sergei Lavrov, who is basically Putin's mouthpiece, has been angry at NATO recently, angry that NATO have been, even though it's empty words, talking about perhaps including Ukraine, talking about supporting Ukraine more. And there's only one language that Russia actually understands, and that's deterrent. The Russians also blew up an American electronics factory in Lviv. So it's American buildings, British buildings, it's inside Poland, and it's the EU delegation buildings that are being hit right now, because this isn't just a middle finger to Ukrainians, it's a middle finger to every country in the West that supports rule of law. And this is happening for a few different reasons, and it represents a shift in diplomacy right now, which is basically a shift to zero. The Alaska talks were obviously a complete waste of time. Nothing has come out of that except for Putin's photos of him walking down a red carpet that was rolled out by American soldiers. Great propaganda for Russian nationalists. And so things have moved on. Things have moved on back to how they were before, which is Putin bombing this city. And in the last few days, Steve Witkoff and other members of Trump's entourage have gone on Fox News, and he said no president has done more to bring peace to Ukraine, or to try to bring peace to Ukraine, than Donald Trump.
The president has done God's work. I just hope that when it comes time to assess from a Nobel Peace Prize standpoint, the type of work that President Trump has done, that it's widely acknowledged exactly what has happened out there on the world stage.
Well, the number of drones that are hitting the city has increased threefold since he's took office, and this city was hit with cruise missiles this morning. So any attempt at peace is absolutely futile at this point. But there's something else happening that I want to talk about on the front lines of this country, and that's exactly why I went to the Donbass. And that's that this country is hitting Russian oil refineries like there is no tomorrow. 80% of the strikes that are happening on a nightly basis here are hitting oil-related infrastructure in Russia. And oil is where Russia gets its economy to buy weapons, make weapons, and pay soldiers to come here and kill Ukrainians. And it's actually working. And the Russian economy is taking a massive hit because of this. There's a pipeline that runs under this country and it gives Russian gas to Hungary, and that was temporarily severed with Ukrainian strikes recently. And the reason that I'm talking about money is because money is the backbone of this entire war right now. It's just come out that the Russians are spending $560 million every single day on this war, on trying to take this country. That is the annual budget of some of its poorest regions, of some of its poorest oblasts. It's completely unsustainable. At an exact time, they're experiencing a labor famine, 2 million shortages right now. That's because 1 million soldiers have been killed or out of action. That's because hundreds of thousands of Russians have fled Russia since the start of this war. And it's because of new waves of mobilization. And labor shortages matter because that also means manufacturing shortages. It's not just oil being pumped out of the ground and sold to other markets that creates the Russian economy. It's the people that pump it out of the ground. It's the people that create the machinery to get it out of the ground. And it's also general exports of Russian products that are no longer going to be made because of the labor famine. And so Russia is in a very, very difficult situation right now. And so they changed their tactics on the front line. And that's why I went to the Donbass, because I've been hearing some very concerning news about new tactics they've been using. They're basically trying to choke out all of the cities anywhere near the front line. A good friend of mine, Zarina Zabriskie, currently is in a city called Kherson. I've reported there for 2.5 years. And the highway from Mykolaiv to Kherson, which is the artery to that city, it's where food, aid, medical supplies, and military equipment basically get to that city. For the first time, that highway has been closed down because the Russians have focused all of their energy, not just on hammering the city, but on severing that route. And this is extremely concerning. There basically aren't many other options in and out of that city. And I've just come back from Kramatorsk and Dobrobylia. The exact same tactics are being deployed there. The roads that I used to take down to Konstantinivka and down to Dobrobylia are now completely impassable. Even one of the commanders that takes those routes once a day told me there's a 50-50 chance we'd be killed by FPV drones if we cross them. And that's because the Russians have realized they don't have the manpower before spring to take the land that Putin wants. They physically don't have it. And so instead, they've gone for plan B, and that's to choke out all of these cities. Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, Konstantinivka, Dobrobylia, Pokrovsk, and to any city on the front line, because that's all they can basically do. And they're doing this with drones. And I've been following the roads and the back roads all across the Donbass in the last few months. And there was only one of these new net roads, these anti-drone net roads, these anti-drone sort of new nets that were being installed for the first time. And literally a few days ago, almost every single back street, almost every single road I went down was covered in these nets, because the Russians are now focusing basically their new front line on supply routes, on anything getting in and out of these cities. And it's because they have a lack of resources. They can't take Konstantinivka, they can't take Kramatorsk in the way that they could take Bakhmut previously. They're losing artillery, tanks, they're losing massive amounts of equipment, they're losing oil refineries, and they're losing the backbone of their war. And so now they're using cheap drones to try and cut these cities off. And this is an act of desperation, and it matches with what we've seen here in Kyiv. And the only solution to any of this, and the only way any of this is going to come to an end, is if Russia can't afford this war anymore. And US sanctions don't look like they're going to come into place anytime soon. Putin is still got Trump in his back pocket, and the West is still far too weak to act. The British Prime Minister responded to an attack on a British government building this morning with a tweet saying that it was unacceptable. That's pretty much how outraged Britain is in this situation. So Ukrainians are taking things into their own hands. They built their own missiles, these Pelican missiles, and experts literally said back in 2022 that would be impossible. It would take decades to do, but Ukrainians have figured out how to do it. And they've started hitting Russia where it hurts, which is in the pocket, in their oil refineries. And if this country continues hitting Russia in those places, then this will come to an end much quicker than we might expect. Anyway, all the footage that I've gathered in the Donbass is pretty comprehensive. I've spoken to commanders from various units. I've spoken to soldiers on the ground, as well as soldiers that are training, to ask about their motivations and what they see for the future. And I'm putting all this together into a bigger documentary alongside my Estonia documentary about the full front line. Because again, the front line isn't just here in Ukraine. It extends way up now, all the way through the new Baltic defense line from Estonia to Finland. So I'm going to be bringing a bigger picture, looking at all of this. If you're interested in that, then please hit subscribe to my channel. But that's basically what's happening at the moment. That's why Russia have been hitting cities with cruise missiles. They've been putting middle fingers up to NATO, and they've been getting desperate on the front line. So if you're interested in this update, I hope you liked it. Look out for my next 2 big documentaries, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.